السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم. Alright, Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa ahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli Allahumma amin amma ba'd. Alright, good morning everybody. Ahlan wa sahlan. I hope everybody's doing well. Inshallah, let's just jump straight into it. Alhamdulillah, I am doing very well. How are you all doing? Wa alaikum assalam. Wa alaikum assalam. Alright, again, let's just jump straight into the questions and maximize our time here, inshallah. Sabrine, I can't answer tech questions. I'm very sorry about that, but please email contact@bayyinah.com for tech questions. Number 9 from the quiz. The quiz yesterday or 2 days ago? Number 9 from the quiz. Is this module ending tomorrow? This module is indeed ending tomorrow. And then we have our normal 4-day break. And then we'll start again next Friday, inshallah. Okay, yesterday's quiz. Let's take a look. Okay. An yut'imuni. So this is a bit of a special case. Remember when we were learning the different forms of a present tense verb, we learned about yut'imuna, right? We learned about yut'imuna. We never ever learned about yut'imuni, okay? And remember, when we're talking about ending combinations, it has to match exactly. There can't be any differences. So una is not the same as uni. Okay, una is not the same as uni. We never learned anything that has the ending of uni. So for those of you who thought that, this was a spelling mistake, that's where you were wrong. It's not a spelling mistake. You can find this in the Quran. I believe you can find it in Surah Al-Insan on the second page. But what's actually happening here is we learned before that pronoun ana, when you attach it to something, it becomes ni, right? Sometimes when you have the pronoun ana attached to something, you'll also see it as ni, but without the ya. So it's just ni. And that's what's happening here. This is the pronoun ana. It's ni with the ya removed. And then, oops, sorry. The fi'l is yut'imuna, but it's made light because of an. So yut'imuna is yut'imu, and then the ni at the end is a pronoun for ana. Ay yut'imuni. That's what's happening here. So the original or the normal version is yut'imuna, and then the huwa version is yut'imu. So there's a sometimes we'll add something on like this onto the quiz, not to, I don't know, I guess it's not to mock you or make fun of you or anything. It's so that, you can start getting an idea of how to look at things, and also to show you that, there are some things that or to remind you that there are some things that you haven't learned, but they're not too far away, and you can start understanding these special things too. And يُطْعِمُونِ, this isn't something too tough for you guys to understand where you are now. And there are other things like this as well, inshallah, that we'll be getting to as we get deeper into Saf. But it's kind of like an extra special treat. And for some people, they can understand this. Some people they could have gotten the answer to this correctly as well. So we're not trying to make fun of you or anything if that's what you thought. Okay. Active, passive, transitive, and intransitive. So, um, let's see what's a good word for this. Let's do allama. Allama means he taught. So a word that's transitive means that whatever the action is, it's being done to something or someone else. Okay? Whatever the action is, it's being done to something or someone else. If I'm teaching, then someone is being taught. Or you can even say that there's a subject that's being taught, right? If I could be teaching Zaid, or I could be teaching math. Okay, so if I say I'm teaching math, then it's something that's being taught, subject. Or if I say I'm teaching Zaid, then it's someone who's being taught. Okay, it's a person. So that means that this verb is transitive. Now, if I use the word aslama, aslama means he himself submitted. Well, okay, he himself submitted. If a verb, whatever the action of the verb is, can't be done to somebody or something else, then that means that verb is intransitive. Okay? So if I'm submitting, and don't think of this as submitting like submitting your homework, okay? This isn't submitting something in, this is when somebody themselves submits themselves. Okay? It's like, for example, if you say, Aslamtu lillah, I submitted to Allah. That means you're not saying that you're submitting, you're not turning something in, you're not giving something to Allah. You yourself are submitting. You yourself are putting yourself into submission for Allah. That's what aslama means. So I can't perform the fi'l of aslama to something else. It's always whoever the doer of aslama is, that's who the action is being done to, just by the meaning of the verb. To give you another example, um, you can look at the verb to run. If I'm running, I can't run something. I can't run someone. I myself am running, and that's it. That's just how it is. I hope that one makes sense. So if a verb is transitive, to recap, the action is done to someone or something else, and if it's intransitive, then the action only affects the doer. Now, If there's no someone or something being affected by the action, that means that I can't make it passive. So let's do run again because I feel like aslama is going to be a bit difficult. But if I'm saying I ran, okay? If I'm saying I ran, I am already the one being affected by the running, so I can't remove the doer and make the doer unknown. It wouldn't make any sense. I was ran. It doesn't make any sense now. But I can remove the doer in taught because taught can happen to someone or something else. I can take the doer away and I can replace it with whoever whoever was receiving the action previously. So if originally the sentence is I taught him, I can take I away and make it he was taught. Now both of these are saying the same thing. Both of these are saying the same thing. It's just in the first one, I have a doer, and in the second one, I don't have a doer. This first one is called active, and the second one is called passive. Okay? Only transitive verbs can be put into passive form. Intransitive verbs cannot be put into passive form. It doesn't make any sense if you try to put them into passive form. Like when I tried to do it with run, I can't take the doer away because it's intransitive. I don't have an object that can take the place that can become the done to basically. Here, him became the done to, but I don't have anything like that in I ran. So again, transitive verbs affect someone or something else, and they become the done to when you make it passive. Intransitive verbs, they affect the doer, so there's no done to, or you can't find a done to, you can't make a done to, so you can't make intransitive verbs passive. So even though when we learned aslama, we did uslima and yuslamu, uslima and yuslamu are not real words. Zubi, Rias, that's not a typo. It is family 4. We just did it first because it was easy. Allama by itself is not I taught him. I was just giving an example of a pronoun. So if I wanted to say I taught him, I would say allamahu. I'm sorry for the confusion if that confused you, Rizwan. Umrah Sheikh, please clarify your question. I don't really understand what you're saying. What you're asking, sorry. If I say yadribu, who version is daraba, is this correct? No. Um, because you went from the present version, African craft, you went from the present version to the past version. Both yadribu and daraba are the huwa version. It's just that yadribu is the huwa version in present tense, and daraba is the huwa version in past tense. So they're both huwa, just different tenses. They're different forms completely. You can't change from yadribu to daraba, but I can change from yadribu to tadribina, for example, because all I did was change the doer. I kept the same form, I kept the same shape, I just changed the doer. So whoever asked about forced, let me find it again. Somebody asked about aslama in passive. Okay, Valentina, it can't be I was forced to submit as passive of submission. No, because now you're changing what the verb is. The verb was submit. Now, if you say I was forced, the verb has become forced. Get it? Now you're being forced to do something, sure, but you're being forced. That's what the verb is. So that's not the passive of submit, that's the passive of to force. So make sure you're good at knowing what the verb is, what the action is in your sentence. From light, li, and li of lightest, are they the same? They look the same, but they are not the same. By form, when I say form, sadaf, I mean shape. So, for example, past tense is one shape or form. Present tense is another shape or form. Masdar is another one. Ism fa'il is another one. Past passive is another. Past present is another. Command is another. Forbidding is another. Dharf is another. These are all different shapes or forms. But Umrah, the li of light and the li of lightest, they look the same, sure, but they have different effects. So they have different meanings too. So they can't be the same. Just like we have, what's another good example? Okay, just like let's take the pronoun huma, right? Huwa huma hum, hiya huma hunna. They both look the same. They're both pronouns, sure, but one of them represents two males and one of them represents two women. So in meaning, they're different. So when it comes to context and how words are affected, you'll be able to tell which is the li of light and which is the li of lightest. Naima in tadribina, the doer would be yushi. That's correct. It would still be the same shape, present tense. It's just I changed the doer from yadribu huwa to tadribina, which is anti. Will every word in jahada have two masdars? Yes. Every word in jahada will have two masdars. Excuse me. Number 9 of the quiz, we did that at the beginning of this session. So please refer to the beginning of the session, inshallah. Guys, try to keep the questions on Arabic content and on the intensives, inshallah. I know that some people are going through some technical issues. I really can't help with that. So I'm sorry about that, but yeah, I really can't do anything. So when I say two masdars for the jahada family, when we went over it, for example, we said jahada yujahidu jihadan wa mujahadatan. Jihadan wa mujahadatan. These are both masdar. They're both ideas of the of the action, right? So if jahada means to struggle, both jihad and mujahada mean struggle, like struggling, right? the action. It's the idea of struggle. Um, they're just different words for it. Noorlina, I'm I don't understand your question. Can you clarify? What's the third word in the jahada family? Jihadan. It's a masdar. The fourth word, ومجاهدة, is also a masdar. Nabil. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay. Um, Naima, I'll go through the root Ain Lam Mim in family in the Jahada family, inshallah, very quickly. So listen closely. I'm not going to write it down. I'm just going to say it. So Ain Lam Mim in Jahada would be past tense. Alama, present tense. Yu'alimu, مصدر علاما ومعالمة اسم فاعل فهو معالم. And the passive line علم يعالم علاما ومعالمة فهو معالم. الأمر منه عالم والنهي عنه لا تعالم والظرف منه معالم. Zuleha, that's correct. If Ustad gives you something to memorize, don't add or take things away from what he's giving you to memorize. So if in family three Ustad gives you two masdars, don't think you can just take one away. Because whatever Ustad is giving you, like the dream course is designed for you to be able to understand Quran, right? So whatever Ustad is giving you is stuff that you'll see in Quran. So if you take one of the masdars away and then you see it in Quran and then you get confused as to what this is, it would only be your fault because you decided not to memorize it. Manzoor, I can't answer that yet. We'll know when we get to that point, inshallah. Can a non-flexible word ever be heavy? If yes, examples. If the non-flexible word is heavy if it's written heavy, then it'll always be heavy. If it's written light, it'll always be light. So, for example, the word hudan, ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه, hudan للمتقين. It's written heavy, so in rafa', nasb, and jar, it'll always be hudan, hudan, hudan. Anhu, like when nahyu anhu means from it. An harf jar. You guys should know that. An is a harf jar. Who is a pronoun. Sadaf, that's a good start. Let me pin that so everybody can see it. The features of the families. Hamza in Aslama, Shadda in Allama, and the Alif in Jahada. This is a good, this is a good kind of intro to it. There are other smaller things, but these are the main features of each family. The reason I'm not writing some things is because it's all already written on your in the PDF from yesterday, and it would take me like 15 minutes to not 15 minutes, It would take me a decent amount of time to write the whole conjugation out. Can an intransitive verb be in derived form two or four? I don't understand the question. Ali B, please clarify. Oh, Dina, no, I can't, because some argue that it doesn't have a root. So, Ustad would be better to answer that question for you. What does dharf mean? Dharf is the time and place of an action. So if I say the fi'l sajada, which means to make sajda, and I want to talk about the time and place of making sajda, then I would put it into dharf form. That's where the word masjid comes from. The word masjid is a dharf of the verb sajda. So masjid is a time or place of making sajda. In this case, we're using it to mean place. A masjid is a place of making sajda. Yes, AA, minhu, does mean the same thing. You'll see that depending on the context, a harf can take on a lot of meanings. So the meanings that you guys got on the harf of jar and the harf of nasab page are the most popular meanings, but depending on context, they'll be used in a variety of ways. So if I say al-amru minhu, the amr, like commanding this verb, that's what that means. The command for this, the command from this is whatever the command is. And then وَالنَّهْيُ عَنْهُ is, and forbidding from it is whatever the forbidding form is. Saqib, um, the word sajada has multiple dharf forms. So masjid is one of them, masjid is another, and there's more than that too. That's why, I mean, we're not getting into that yet. The file is up for all of the, oh yeah, I should probably go over that because we did add. Okay, at the bottom of the study materials page, there's the audio for Jahada, and there's also this Soft Families PDF, and this has Allama and its full sarf, Jahada and its full sarf, and Aslama and its full sarf with meanings. Rizwan, when we're doing sarf, when we're going over the families themselves, the masdar will always say it as nasab form. But when you're using a masdar in the actual sentence, you would need to see how it's being affected to determine if it's a rafa', nasab, or jar. Sarf workbook day 3, number 8. Which exercise? Um, for whoever's asking if that page is the study resource page is public, it's not. It's for beta subscribers only. Okay, first exercise. Well, what's the goal here? Convert the following past fi'ls into passive form. Okay, so The fi'l here is ista'dhana. Ista'dhana. Ista'dhana might look like a word that you're familiar with. Istaghfara. This is a different family. We haven't learned the family yet, but you don't need to know the family to be able to take an active fi'l and make it past tense because we know the rule already. The rule is to leave the last letter alone. Okay, the rule for any past tense fi'l is we leave the last letter alone. So we're not going to touch ra. We put a dhamma, or sorry, we put a kasra on the second to last letter, right? So we're going to leave ra alone. Why the font gets smaller? We leave the ra alone. We put a kasra on the second to last letter. So we put an e sound on the second to last letter. And then everything else that has a vowel will take dhamma, will take u. So the first one changes from e to u. The sin stays the same because it doesn't have a vowel. The ta changes from a to u, and then the ghain stays the same because it doesn't have a vowel. And then you're done. You leave the last letter alone. The second last letter takes e, and all other vowels become u. And that's how we go from istaghfara active to ustughfira passive. Rizwan, that's correct. You can say Islamun, you can say Islaman, you can say Islamin. You can also say Al-Islamu. You can add Alif Lam onto it as well. If I use qatala in the jahada family, then the masters are qatala yuqatilu qitalan wa muqatalatan. Not wa muqatalatan. That's not right. It's not going to be not uh, muqat, not muqatalatan. That's wrong. It's muqatalatan. Muqatalatan. Istaghfara means to seek forgiveness. Why did the ta become two? Because that's the rule for making a passive. Istaghfara, it doesn't mean forgiveness. It means to seek forgiveness. Jinan, a did already become u, but remember the rule for making a past tense passive. You don't only give one letter u. You give as many letters u as you can, and then the second to last letter becomes e, and then the last letter stays the same. So even if we had like 20 letters, they would all take u except the last letter and the letter before it. Oh, right. I never did the actual. Sorry, Najia. I never actually did the word. So The verb was ista'dhana. Ista'dhana. So we're gonna do something similar that we just did with istaghfara. The last letter again remains untouched. And the second to last letter becomes e, and then all other vowels become u. So again, the alif at the beginning will take u, sin will stay the same because it doesn't have a vowel. Ta will become u, and then the hamza will stay the same because it doesn't have a vowel. So ista'dhana is ustu'dina, ustu'dina, and that's passive. Qitalan is the masdar of qatala. That's correct, Naima. قتالا ومقاتلة. Rabi'a, it's not ومقاتلة. It's not T, it's Ta. ومقاتلة. No, in active, wait. Samilias, in present tense, the rules for making a passive are different. What I just showed you with all of the oo's and then e at the end, that's for past, not present. The rules for present are different. Okay? The rules for present are different. Let's do a present to clear up any confusion. So we'll do yastaghfiru again. We'll do the present tense of istaghfara, which is yastaghfiru. So for present tense, we're not doing as many oo's as we can and then an e at the end. Um, the part that remains the same is the last letter will not be touched. The ending will not be touched. And I say last letter, but I actually mean ending. So if I have una, I'm going to leave the entire una alone. If I have ina or ani, I'm going to leave that whole ending alone. Okay, that's what I mean by last letter. So I should have clarified. But we leave the entire ending alone. For past tense, we made the second to last letter e and then everything else u. Present tense is a little bit different. Present tense, we're making the first letter u and then everything else a. So the sin will stay the same. That is already a. The ghain will stay the same, and the a will change from e to a. So the first letter becomes u, and everything else becomes a. So yastaghfiru becomes yustaghfaru, and that's how we make a present tense passive. Maliha, that's correct. This is not the Aslama family. This is a family that you haven't learned yet. That's because, okay, Sadaf, the reason why in the case of ista'dhana, the reason why this ista'dhana did not become a waw here is because this is not an alif. This is not an alif. Make sure you're able to tell the difference between alif and hamza. Alif and hamza are two different letters. If hamza, just because hamza is sitting on top of an alif here, it doesn't mean that you're reading an alif. Because if this was an alif, you wouldn't say ista'dhana. You would say ista'dhana. Long alif, right? Ista'dhana. That's the difference between the two. Alif would kind of make the ta longer, but hamza has its own sound. So if this was ista'dhana, then I could say ustudina. But because this is ista'dhana, I can't change hamza to waw. So it's ustudina. Amal, that's correct. All the letters in the middle will take fatha. Unless they have sukoon. Then they'll stay with sukoon. No, you have not done this family Uzma. Not yet. I'm just using this word because somebody asked about it. Hamza always sits on an alif. Sadaf, no, Hamza will not always sit on an alif. Hamza can sit on. Hamza can come by itself. Sometimes you'll see Hamza just by itself on an or in. Sometimes you see Hamza on an alif. Like for example, um, Sa'ala. So Hamza is on an alif here. Sometimes you see it on a waw. Mu'minin. Sometimes you'll even see it on a yeah, like Uri'a. No matter what it's sitting on though, it doesn't matter what it's sitting on. If you see a Hamza, then you're going to read it as Hamza. Even if it's on a waw, even if it's on a ya, even if it's on an alif, you call it Hamza. It doesn't matter what it's sitting on, it's Hamza. The Hamza takes over whatever it's sitting on. Roshan, that's not something we've learned yet. All right, since it's 10:30, inshallah, we're going to wrap up. Jazakumullahu khairan, all of you for coming out and asking your questions. Inshallah, I hope this was beneficial as always. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Ustadh should be coming in the next couple of minutes, and then we will get started on the normal class. So barakallahu fikum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.